Good evening, Jordan. Good to see everybody. So, just to start out like we always do, does anybody have a safety moment? Hey, Pasita, good to see you. We have a safety moment. Start us off.
There was an accident on the way home. So probably somebody on their phone. I don't know. Yeah, it's not really safety, but you should be
It's
safe and not text and drive.
Yeah, driving's a big one. So let's throw out some things for driving, making sure we're not distracted. I guess one thing as you become a project manager, you end up getting, that phone is a leash and you will be contacted all day and all night with questions. So you got to be careful to respect your driving and not get distracted. A weird safety moment here. You have to be very aware. I don't know for who of us on this call or on the recording that travel. But if you travel for work, sometimes you get into really unusual situations. For example, we were working near the Amish community. And being by the Amish community means you have a lot of very slow moving vehicles, right? The horse drawn carriages. So just being aware of your surroundings and in general driving. All right, good deal. Appreciate you. Okay, so just a heads up to everybody, there's only a couple of people this affects, but week one assignments do get a 0 at the end of this week. So make sure you complete week one assignments. And we are on week 4, so we are halfway. So nearing the end is an incorrect statement. We're exactly halfway, but let's make sure we get caught up so we don't fall behind on the back end. All right, so one thing I think I try and do is try and make sure that you're prepared for the assignments. I have you learn the lesson plan, and then I teach you to the assignments. But sometimes I think I get hyper focused on that, and I don't give you the why. So let's kind of go back into what we've done so far and talk about what we've done and how that relates to being a project manager. So, can I get somebody from the class to text or go off mute and let me know? Project Charter, what is that? What muscle are we flexing as far as being a project manager when we developed our Project Charter? What do we got?
The heart.
The hearts. My apologies. So, what did we learn about being project manager that was helping us? What did the project manager prepare us for? What did we learn about being a project manager from the project charter? What's our takeaways on that? I was trying to not be literal with the muscle. What I meant was, what did we learn from the project charter about being project managers? How's this helping us? Exactly, right? So, being a project manager, in order to run your project, you need to understand the scope of the project, right? And so, what this class does is it starts you from 0 as if you are creating a project. And so, it allows you, no, you're all good. The texting is fine. Thank you. It allows you to, it requires you to kind of start from the beginning to understand the scope. But understanding your scope is going to be a huge portion of being a project manager. So one way you do it is the way that we did it. You create a project charter. You explain what the project is. How else might you, as a project manager, understand the scope of your project? What are the different tools that we would have to understand the scope of our project? I guess Samantha's doing something really cool. You're doing that VIP sponsor. How was that created? How did you understand the scope of that project in your real world? If you don't mind letting me know and sharing. How is that defined? No, you're all good. You're all good. So Samantha, while you're doing that, a lot of times your project charter or your project scope, right? From my experience in construction, a lot of that time is going to come from your contract. Let's see, who else do I know? I think, Jordan, what are you doing? Yeah, go ahead, Samantha. Oh, I think we got issues with your connection. My apologies, Samantha. Thank you for trying. I think we got an issue with your connection. So I could guess, right? So there's a lot of different ways that we can have a project start and a project being identified. You have your contract, which a lot of times will happen with construction. It could be a simple email from a boss. It can be an initiative that you identify, right? But the key thing, no matter how big or small your project is as a project manager, is to identify what the scope is. So fill a business gap, Patricia. That sounds like you identified the need or your boss identified the need, right? A project could start with a simple email, right? You could have a boss that sends you an email, or you could have a meeting that you're given an action item that becomes a project. So one thing as a project manager, the project charter is just one tool, but the concept is understanding the scope, right? As a project manager, we need to understand that scope. So as a project manager, you need to understand the scope. What are you producing, right? And within that, you need to understand your cost, your duration, your team, your assumptions, your risk, right? And then the go, no go. So this is the project charter is kind of beginning that plan, right? So it's understanding the scope and starting an understanding of what that scope means as far as cost, duration, who you're going to have to do it, what assumptions you have, what risks and stuff like that. So the cost benefit analysis, and Samantha, I see you're typing. Thank you. We'll come back to it once you get that through. I know it sounds like you're on the phone, which is kind of tough. To be honest, the cost benefit analysis, I think, isn't a tool that I really would see a lot as a project manager in my world. Usually in my world, we're kind of given the cost benefit analysis that we have to build to. So a lot of the people in this class are doing projects that are construction, right? So a construction project, you're really just going to need to ensure that you're meeting the cost benefit analysis that you're given to your budget. Does anybody in the class have an experience in which they've had to actually defend a project to their leadership? Does anybody have a practical application of that where they've had to give? Yeah, Lee.
So yeah, the project that I'm doing, historically, so I work in the defense industry, and historically it's like taking your car to a mechanic and they advertise them as an ASE certified mechanic. It's on their wall, but none of their employees are ASE certified. So when I hired on to this role, I saw those limp factors. It was like, who's certified to this? And was finding out that people were not certified to it. And then, so we were looking at what it costs. It's very expensive to send individuals out. Like, it's so expensive. It's like thousands of dollars just for the course. And then that's not even like their travel expenses and per diem and whatnot. So, I'm having to defend why this, I'm needing a training room, why this would be an effective project, although it's all capital budget, right? It's coming out of the company's dollar, and they're, for them, apparently it's hard to justify it. Whereas I see like, well, we can buy all this equipment up for, or we can even recycle some of our equipment and put new equipment on the production floor, and versus thousands of dollars to send somebody to just take the course. It's $100 per certificate plus their salary, plus the time off the production floor. But I also know that I have employees that go away for 5 days, and if they get done in 3 days, they have a 2-day vacation, and we'll never know that. Yep. So if we finish in 3 days, they go back to the production floor. And so it's and if we're being honest, it's taken about 8 years to get to this point. It's been a long drawn out process. So mine's very realistic. Mine is finally taking to fruition in the right time with this course. That's why I'm using it. I literally got the go ahead to say, hey, January 1, we can start doing this stuff. And okay. So it just honestly worked out with this class.
Yeah. And hopefully
I've had to really, I don't know. Did you, like, I sent you like a training proposal just to look at. I don't know if you had time to look at it, but
I didn't see that. Can you resend it? I missed that.
I will. I had some connected, yeah, but it's going to save us over $1 million within an 8-year span.
Yeah. So I think both Samantha and Lee are talking about, and Patricia says it as well, is kind of identifying a gap, a need, right? And that's going to be a huge way to honestly become management, right? If you're not management, if you don't get hired in as management, you see a need and you fill that need, right? And then Lee, like you're saying, right? If you identify a project that you want to do, they're going to want to understand how they're going to get value back, right? And the way that we did it was very literal, which works very well in finance and construction and some things like that. But as a lot of you saw, the literal way of cost benefit analysis is a bit tough when you're doing intangibles, right? So sometimes a cost benefit analysis doesn't have to be dollars and cents. But if you're proposing a project, you have to understand who you're proposing it to and what kind of things they want to see, right? And so the cost benefit analysis is something as a project manager that you may end up having to do. Why are we doing this project, right? That's a little bit of the project charter. And then the benefits need to outweigh the costs, and you need to kind of explain that. And so then last week, right, week 3, we got into the work breakdown structure. So why do we do that? What did the work breakdown structure do for us? We had our project, we understand the scope. What does the work breakdown structure help us do? Hopefully it's pretty simple, but Jordan or Brittany, what do you think? Or Niraj, what do you think? Work breakdown structure. Why is that an important thing in the project manager toolkit? Or what did we kind of do during the work breakdown structure? What were we doing? How's that helping us as a project manager? Why did we do that as an assignment?
Yeah, it just kind of helps you like plan and schedule. It just breaks it down into kind of smaller components that are easier to manage and organize.
Yep. No, 100%. So, I mean, really this work breakdown structure is going to be, like you said, Brittany, it chops it down to little pieces. And this is what we're going to be using for the remainder or for a lot of the rest of our project and a lot of rest of the class, right? So that work breakdown structure should be what we're using to build our schedule, to build our estimate, to piecemeal it so that we understand our success metrics, right? So we have a work breakdown structure. It gives us different activities, and it just gives us how we're going to do the work, what the scope is broken down to, and then how we're going to measure the work. So you're itemizing your work into subsections to do that high-level schedule, different processes, budgeting, cost monitoring, right? Understanding cost performance, right? And then we did the project duration and critical path. So, by the way, I was very pleasantly surprised by how wonderful y'all did. You guys, there was a few that missed 1 or 2 things, but for the most part, you all got high to mid to low A's. Maybe a couple got higher B's, and there was a few that maybe need to talk to me because I had a little confusion with the critical path. But you guys did great. This part is you taking your work down, taking what you have, and then creating a schedule. And we're going to create a schedule this week in a much easier way. And I think it was Brittany saying last week about why aren't we Primavera? And usually you will. But the reason that we wanted to do this manually is to get an understanding of how you build a schedule. You'll never really have to do this, hopefully, as a project manager. You'll have tools to help you, but it'll understand how do things relate together? How do they work? How do they flow? And then the critical path, right? I don't think anybody is struggling. I think everybody did a great job as far as what we had submitting in. But again, this is more of an academic exercise. So yeah, what we want to know is critical path, right? Okay, cool. Then the risk register, right? We're identifying our risks, their impacts, and what we're going to do, right? So being a project manager, right, is kind of fully understanding and defining the scope of your project. And that's what we want in the very beginning, is really defining our scope. And I think I've seen a few people where if you don't keep that scope in your mind, you start maybe missing some things, right? So I did notice in risks a few times, people started broadening their scopes to operations, right? A project manager, right? You want to focus on that project and the success of that. Obviously, you can have other hats, you can deal with operations, but fully understanding and defining your scope, making sure that you're accurately communicating that scope and the expectations of what you're going to do to your stakeholders and sponsors, right? Transforming your scope into actionable items, schedule, cost, and risk, right? These are all things that you can do as a project manager. Most of my experience in the project manager is something that's not really even covered too heavily in this class, and that's the execution of the project. The Indiana Tech laid out the curriculum in that they really, really go into the pre-planning of being a project manager, but they don't really hit hard on the execution of the project. And that's one of the biggest things that you're going to do as a project manager, right? So I don't know. Hopefully this helps. Does anybody have any questions about project management that isn't maybe class related? Is there anything that we want to talk about or understand as far as being a project manager? Last week I had heard some people kind of saying, well, this assignment is weird. I'm a little worried about being a project manager. And I just kind of wanted to talk about what we did and how it impacts it. So does anybody have anything that they want to talk about project management in general? I've been doing it for a few years in construction, but I can kind of give my advice. If not, somebody just type in no and we'll keep rocking. So do we have any questions that we want to talk about being a project manager?
I'm good.
Yep, sweet. Let's rock then. All right. So suggested readings. So there's a few assignments that really make sense to use these suggested readings and citing these. And remember, you do get extra credit on this. Sometimes about midway through the class, I miss giving extra credit. So if you deserve extra credit and I missed it, I apologize. It's not your responsibility to check me, but make sure you get those points. So I actually think, Lee, I saw you used a couple things, so I have to go back and give those extra credits. But if you're using these documents as extra credit and I'm not giving you the extra credit, please feel free to just let me know. So the Baron and Baron, they're going to be the politics of projects this week. And then this one's going to be much more applicable. And that's going to be Watt, Chapter 12, Budget Planning. So those are two books that you can really kind of use to help you. All right, so remember, we're doing a class-long project worth 150 points. We've done Module 1, Project Identification, Module 2, Project Charter and Cost Benefit Analysis, Module 3, Work Breakdown Structure, Network Diagram, and Risk Register. Now we're in week 4, Module 4. And we're going to do our project budget and graphical schedule. Module 5, we'll go through the project communication matrix. And Module 6, we're going to bring it all together with a PowerPoint that you're going to record on a video, which is going to be your executive summary and your project plan document. And then, Niraj, I do apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, but I saw you were texting something. Yes, beautiful. Okay, Wednesday. That sounds great. I wanted to touch base with you. Wednesday would be perfect. If you don't mind, could you please email me outside of this, and we can find a time on Wednesday that will work. Just because this big blue button I might forget. So I appreciate it, and I do have all day Wednesday available. So just email me, please, and we'll get something set up. All right. So. No, thank you. Week 6. All right. So this is what we have, and I keep kind of showing you this. But this is going to be a big part of it. Make sure. So I've sent you. So, and they aren't. You don't have to use these, but they're really to follow, and it'll get exactly what I'm going to grade. But I gave you the template, and in the project plan template, it gives you what I'm asking for in each section, right? For example, I'm going to have you just copy and paste module 3 WBS and network diagram, and module 4 graphical schedule. And then what I want you to do is summarize in paragraph form your critical path and explain to me what it means. So I have sent this in the announcements, and it's not necessary, but it really will help you to follow this to get an A, right? This explains to you step by step what I'm expecting. Same thing with the Excel or the PowerPoint. I do expect a video of the PowerPoint, but this, again, you don't have to use this PowerPoint, but it really does give you what I'm looking for, right? And if you fill this out and then you just kind of go through everything and you read through it, it's going to be an easier way for you to understand my expectations and hopefully, get that easy, or not easy, but get that grade, get that A. So those are both things that I've sent in the announcements. Here, I can kind of show you here. Just remember, that's going to be a big project, so I always keep bringing it up, but I sent it in the beginning of the class. You have module 6 revised directions, and this will give you the outline. And I don't think the directions are that revised, but it is a project plan and the executive summary. So a video with the PowerPoint and the written document. All right. So that is going to be week 6. I just wanted to continue to remind you of that. All right. All right. So for my people that are listening virtually, key phrase. We're going to do a phrase for the first one. So I want to say productivity does not sacrifice safety, right? So week 4 here, we're going to talk about budget, cost, and performance. And this is what I mean, right? You have quality, cost, time, and safety. You cannot sacrifice any of these for each other, especially safety. Safety is on the top. We cannot chase after money to get less safe, right? We can't sacrifice safety to chase after money, sacrifice safety to chase after time. You shouldn't sacrifice quality, right? For one, it's ethical, it's moral. We don't want anybody to be hurt. But for 2, if you're sacrificing safety, you won't make money forever. It's going to kick you in the butt. You're going to end up losing. So this is a cost management process that I've kind of developed for the project, right? And I don't know if this is helpful or not, but you have an estimate that you get from your work, and then you have that budget. So we're going to talk about the budget today, right? And then that budget becomes what your team is using to identify success. Now, you may have a project where budget as critical as schedule, or you may have a project where certain outputs are different, but typically what we're going to talk about today is budget gearing, one of the metrics of success. So your budget's going to be split into, in my world, very clearly quantities to install and hours and costs. Your world may not be quantities to install. You might have milestones, right, that you have to measure across. And so then a good project identifies the goals from a financial standpoint and a scheduling standpoint, and then they are in the field or in execution monitoring it, right? There's some sort of method of monitoring and ensuring that you're meeting the requirements of your goals, right? And then that's going to be stored in a program. So that can be a very formal software program, or it can be simple as written down paper, or it can be Excel. But somehow you have your goals set up, and this one's talking about money. And then you have your monitoring, right? And then we have the monitoring program or method like Excel. And then we have our reporting. And so what we're going to talk about today, when we get to it in a bit, as far as performance reviews, is going to be earned value management. There's a lot of different ways to measure performance, but that's what we're going to talk about. And then if you have a project like I do in construction, if it's not a standalone project, your final costs are going to gear the next job that you do, right? Some of you, this might not be true. Like I said, Samantha, I would assume that you're not consistently creating this VIP space, so it's unlikely that the lessons learned and results will create a new one. But some of us, we do. Like a lot of us are doing houses, kitchen remodels. If you were to do that in a project, something probably you iterate on. All right, so let's talk about week 4, the estimating. So the project budget, you have direct costs and indirect costs. So the direct cost is going to the bulk of your project. It's the things that you need to do the work, right? So developing some new software, you're going to need hardware to run it. Designing a new project, you'll need to buy manufacturing equipment, raw materials. Direct costs are the costs directly associated with executing the work. Is that making sense? I think it's a term I hear a lot, so it makes sense to me. But do you guys understand the difference, what a direct cost is versus maybe an indirect cost, or do you want any clarification? Okay, thank you, Samantha. So this is going to be what you have to estimate this week, right? So you're going to estimate your direct cost, which is going to be labor, materials, equipment, fixed costs, and miscellaneous costs, right? So what you're going to do in this week is you're going to have labor, and you're going to identify all the different types of laborers. Now, I say laborers, I don't mean laborers. It can be, software engineers. It can be, admin. It can be coordinators, people doing the work, right? And here's one thing that hopefully you all picked a good project that was complex enough that you at least have somebody executing the work, because this is going to be one of the requirements of this. So you're identifying people doing the work, and then you calculate their total hours, right? By the duration of what they're doing. And then you calculate cost per hour. You're going to fill that out in this Excel sheet that we've given you. Now, I think the Excel sheet that they give you, and what I suggest you do, again, you don't have to use this, but it is a pretty simple one, is going to be something like this. And you're going to have your WBS items. So I'm going to look at your WBS, and one of the things I'm going to be grading is whether or not your estimate lines up with the WBS you set up. And I'll give some leeway, right? If you've created a WBS that was gigantic and you want to simplify it in this, I still want to see WBS items that you have in your WBS on it. Then you're going to have your tasks and subtasks. Assigned to could be the foreman. I'm not really worried about it here, but here we go, right? You have your hours and your cost per hour, right? So you're going to want to fill in what I'm going to expect is at least one line item showing me some kind of labor, how many hours, and how much cost per hour. And then I'd always love a brief description of kind of how you came to that. If it's obvious to me that this makes sense, maybe I won't ask for that description. But sometimes these things don't make sense, and I might come to you and be like, hey, that doesn't quite make sense. How'd you get this? Right? So if you ever want to just protect you from that, go at the bottom and just give me a description. But you're going to create a labor, and your hours, right? Materials. Again, what type of material, quantity of material, cost of materials. So this one's very, obvious, but, again, hopefully you picked a project that has labor, materials, subcontracts, and equipment. So equipment, again, duration of equipment, or, if you're buying software, that might be a one-time thing. That's fine. And then, any fixed costs or miscellaneous costs. So on the flip side, indirect costs, right? Any management salary, any insurance required, any offices required, dumpsters, bathrooms, cleaning. And then any contingency that you want to put in your budget. So what you're going to end up with is an Excel document for your project that has your budget. So you've been kind of using and creating a budget as you go. Like we had the project charter and you just kind of gave a swag, right? And then we did the cost benefit analysis. Your cost got a little bit better, right? And so now we're going to get into the details, the nitty gritty. And so you're going to use your WBS and you're going to create a budget. And so here's an example of a budget that I would be expecting, right? So this looks like it's not a meal plan prep. It looks like it is a wedding. And so what you have is somebody creating the guest list, somebody mailing the invitations and receiving RSVPs, and we're assuming how many hours. Now, the hours should probably be based off of our schedule. So if we look at our schedule we just created and an activity is going to take us 5 days, I would assume that the labor associated to that, if you're going to have one, should take 5 days. Cost per hour, right? I'm not going to over scrutinize. I'm not going to be like, hey, how did you come to that cost per hour? I will say, how did you come to that cost per hour? If you give me somebody and you say they cost $1,000 per hour, I might be like, that doesn't pass the smell test. Or if you give me somebody that's getting $5 an hour, I may be like, what's going on? But if you have somebody that is in the realm that makes sense, I'm not going to be too critical on how you got that information. All right. Printing invitations, right? That's just a fixed fee of $1,800. Mailing invitations, we have to buy the material, right? And then we have our bridal dress, right? So this is just showing you an indicator of what I'm expecting. This is, and if you follow this general thing, if you give me a labor fixed costs, right? Indirect labor contingency. The big thing I'm going to look for is labor, material, and some kind of fixed costs. So if you don't have equipment, so you have a dark gray, lighter gray. I want at least one from each. That's going to be the grading. Does that make sense? Or is that too ambiguous as far as what I'm looking for? Okay, cool. You can always hit me up. I can always help you. And you can always defend your assignment if you think I'm being unfair. I try to be very fair, but I'm, a person. And if I'm not objective or you think that you've done something and you deserve the credit, I will take your thoughts into consideration. All right, so now you've created your WBS, you've created your schedule, and now we're creating your budget. So this one is not an assignment, but it is a part of the lesson, and it is something that I want to go through, and that's going to be evaluating project performance. So for my people listening to the recording, when you do your Tech Live, please make sure that the keyword number 2 is earned value management. All right, showed you this image, so now we're getting monitoring, right? Monitoring the project, right? And ensuring that we understand the project performance. One thing I want to say is, earned value management is very geared towards projects that really, really focus on production and money. You might have some projects that are not so money driven, more milestone driven. I think, so they might be quicker. But anyway, let's kind of go through this. But the term of earned value management is a Project Management Institute term. It's a term that is used throughout project management. And it is based on the concept that each something, unit, widget, percentage complete, everything you install has a baseline budgeted valued cost. And then it has an actual cost. And those two concepts alone, you end up with several calculations that can help you understand the health of your project from a cost and a schedule standpoint. So that's what we're going to go over for earned value management. So for example, if we have $150,000 to install 300 units, right? We have $150,000, 300 units. So each unit is going to be $500 per unit, right? So this might seem a little harder to comprehend for some of our people that are doing a little bit less tangibles, but the wedding would be an odd example used for earned value management. Well, let's try it. So what you would probably do for something like a wedding is you would assign each milestone or each work breakdown structure item a budgeted value, like you're going to do. And then you would show a percent complete of that item, right? And so then rather than having a cost per unit, you would have a cost per milestone, or you would have a cost per item, and then you would show completion. So it still works, right? You have a budgeted cost of things that you're completing, and that's what the baseline is. So before I go any further, again, this is something I've dealt with in the past, so it makes sense to me, but do we have any questions on this concept of the baseline of earned value management being items have a baseline budgeted cost? Any questions on this? What questions do you have before we go forward? Okay, cool. All right. So at any moment in time, you have a planned value. So what you do, and we're going to show you this in images, for the earned value management is you are going to have a budget and you are going to have a schedule, and then you combine the two. So what you end up with is a time schedule, right? You have a resource loaded schedule. You have a schedule that tells you when things are going to be done, dollar value, right? And so you have a planned value or a budgeted cost of work schedule. So this is the value of work by the budget that you had expected to be completed at this time, right? So let's kick back our $150,000 to install 300 units, 500 units. Let's assume we think we're going to do 10 units a month. That's $5,000 a month. So our planned value after month 1 is going to be $5,000. That is the budget cost of the work we thought we were going to get done. Then you have an earned value, and that is the budgeted cost of work that you have performed. So let's go back to this example. If I planned on getting 10 done per month, so month 1, my budgeted cost of work scheduled would be 500 times 10 would be 5. Let's say I got 20 done. So then my budget of work completed is going to be 10,000, right? That's going to be your earned value or budget cost of work completed. And then we have actual cost of work completed. So we have what we were supposed to be, the value of work we were supposed to get done at this period of time, the value of the work that we actually got done in this period of time, and the actual cost of the work that we've completed. So these three terms, they can be defined in these different ways, are going to give us our project health as far as schedule and cost. So let's kind of see what this looks like. So this is a curve that you're going to get if your team uses earned value management. You're going to have, on the left here, you have dollars of work that you're supposed to have completed, and you have time in weeks. So here you see your planned value. So this is how much the value of your budget that you thought you were going to get done over the 12 weeks. So you can see that we were going to get around, $180,000 over 12 weeks. So then the earned value shows what you've actually gotten done. And the actual cost, or the value of what you've actually gotten done. And the actual cost is what you've actually spent. So we are here at week 8. Does anybody want to guess? Does anybody guess what this figure is showing us before I tell you? First off, do you think we are ahead of schedule or behind schedule based on this image? Does anybody want to venture a guess? Behind. We are behind schedule. The reason we are behind schedule is because we planned to be around $125,000 of work done, but the value of the work we've done is around $80,000. We are behind schedule. Are we over or under budget? Over or under budget on this image? Under, right? So we are under. The value of the work that we've completed was valued at $95,000, but we've only spent around $60,000. Awesome. So we are under budget. So makes sense. Cool deal. So what do you need for earned value management? Okay, I need a baseline schedule activities with the cost. You need to have the quantity of activities that you've actually completed with your budget and your actual cost, and then you get that. I will allow you guys to do these formulas on your own if you'd like, if you're really excited about this. So I'm going to fly through the next few slides, and I hope you're not, offended. But these are things that really aren't on the assignment, but they are very important tools that you might experience in the workplace. So here's an example. All right. If we are 8 weeks into our project, we've planned on 120 units to be installed. We've only installed 90 units. Our budget is $1,000 per unit. We've spent $60,000. So what we're going to do first is we're going to create or calculate our planned value, or our budgeted, budgeted work. I don't know those acronyms as well. But what you do is your budgeted unit rate, 1,000, times the units you plan to complete. So you have 1,000 times 120, it's $120,000. The next thing is your earned value. So you have your budgeted unit rates about what you've actually completed, right? So this is what you planned on completing, the value of what you planned on completing. Now let's see the value of what you actually completed. Now we've installed 90 units, $1,000 a unit. So we've installed $90,000 worth of budget. We've spent $60,000, right? So this is what we kind of saw in our image. That is what's related to this. This is a logical calculation for what we kind of showed here, right? So this shows us that we have planned to do more than we actually have. So we're behind the schedule, but we've spent less than the value of what we installed, the budget of what we installed. So we're under budget. All right. So there we go. That's that image. Okay, let's look here. We've already asked these questions. Cool. I think we've done a good job there. All right, so what are the indicators that we have for the earned value management? There is cost variance and a cost performance index, CPI, schedule variance, schedule performance variance index, CPI, SPI. So you do your earned value minus your actual costs. Positive is good. And then this tells you a ratio over 1 is good. Same thing for schedule value, variance. All right. So I kind of went through that quickly. It's not your assignment, but if you want to become a project manager, this is a tool that is often used in project management and is very helpful. I am more than willing to spend more time on this if you would like. I have gone through this very quickly. So does anybody want us to go through anything? Do you have any clarification questions or anything that you want answered? Is there anything that was confusing on this that you would like me to help you with? Any questions? What questions do you have on earned value analysis and earned value management? None from you. Okay, you can hit me up if you want. This, like I said, I went through this kind of quick because it is not an assignment, but do not reduce its power. Almost every project could have this as a tool. So here we go. This is showing ahead of schedule and under budget. How do we know that? Ahead of schedule because the PV, right, the value of work we thought we were going to do is under what we've actually done. We're under budget because our actual cost is less than our budgeted cost of the work we completed, which is earned value. Here we have behind schedule and under budget. You see that our planned value of work is more than our actual budgeted value of work. Our actual budgeted value of work is more than our actual cost. So we are behind schedule because we were supposed to have more done than we do, but we're also under budget. Here we're ahead of schedule and over budget because we've completed more than we planned, but it cost more than we budgeted. And finally, here we're behind schedule and over budget. You see this because we have completed less than we thought and we've spent more than was budgeted. Jordan, do you have a question? I see you typing. Nope, no worries. All good. If you missed anything, please hit me up, but that won't negatively impact. You won't have to do the Tech Live reflection. You're all good. So what do you do with this information? So you do you look at this and you see, are we good or bad? What are my variables, right? And this is only a high level. This is your whole project. And if you have a project that is $10,000, maybe you don't do earned value analysis because it's really easy to understand where you're failing. But if you have a $15 million, $50 million, $1 billion project, if your project gets in those big numbers, probably even 100,000, this tool is useful as an overall project health. And then what you need to do is you need to deep dive into your activity level issues, okay? So if I'm doing bad at the global area, now I need to go into my activities and understand, okay, I'm not doing great in the project. Where am I not doing great? Find out what your problem is. Then audit your problem, observe your problem, and make modifications to make it better, right? So in the lesson plan for week 4, why do projects fail? Projects fail because we have unclear objectives. We have scope creep. Does anybody want to tell me what scope creep is? What is scope creep?
When items get added to your scope that weren't originally there.
Yep, and creep means it's slow and steady. I don't know if anybody's built a house, but when you build a house, what could happen? And I think I've seen my parents do a major update on their house, major renovation. You see it and you get excited. And so you're like, you know what? How about we add this? And they're like, yeah, it'll only be $1,000. Well, how about if I add this? Oh, only 500. And you keep adding. You slowly add small things and your scope slowly gets bigger, right? And then you're going to blow your budget and you didn't plan for this, right? So scope creep, got to be careful with that. Unrealistic expectations. So some of you, and I don't think I took too many points off of this, but some of you had ROIs that were crazy. And maybe they're realistic. I don't know. But, right, having an ROI or an NPV or cost benefit analysis that is unrealistic to what you're going to execute, right? That probably means you're setting yourself up to fail. Limited resources, not getting enough resources to the job. This one is huge. And I would say number 5, from my experience, anecdotally, I don't have data to support it. From what I've seen, communication has got to be the number one reason project fails. Number 1. I mean, poor communication really impacts all the other items on this list. But a project manager, if you're a great communicator, the rest of it is secondary, right? You just need to understand how to communicate effectively. Scheduling delays and lack of transparency. All right, so now we're going to get into the next assignment. For those that are listening virtually, Gantt chart is your word of the day 3. So let's talk about scheduling. So last week we did the work breakdown structure, and we did the precedence diagram mapping, critical path mapping. So we've gone through these terms last week. So now we're going to get into something that is maybe a little bit more familiar, which is this is P6 Primavera, but it looks very similar to what you're going to have in Microsoft Project and what we're going to develop for our schedules. So on the left here, you have a work breakdown structure. And on the right here, you have your Gantt chart, which is illustrating visually what your project is going to do. And so you have all of your activities and their relationships, and it gives you a visual of how that's going to work, right? So here's 4 different levels of WBS. Over here, you have your activity IDs, activity name, duration, float, start, and finish. And then over here, you have their relationships. So this is going to be last week. You're probably never going to see that in the real world. This week, what we're looking at right here on the screen, the probability that if your team deals with scheduling, you will see something like this, right? And then you have your Gantt chart over here, right? And typically the software, anything in green or other colors, right? And then red. Red is going to be critical. Now, we learned about critical path last week, so maintain that thought process, and that's going to be showing you what is red. All right. So here is a, $100 million, $80 million project, and it's going to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of activities, and they are all in WBS, as you can see here. And then there's your structure. And then we have our logic, which I think we all understand. What goes before another and how are they tied? So finish starts usually what we do. Then we have total float, which we talked about last week. So total float is the time an activity can be delayed before it becomes critical, right? And critical, every day an activity is delayed, the entire project is delayed. So zero float, critical path method. So that's what we did last week. Can anybody tell me from last week how they might leverage float or critical path to manage a project in the future? Did you see how that tool is used? I'm hoping you did, because that was the point of last week. How do you use critical path? How do you use float as a project manager? What does that do for you in scheduling?
I'll take a stab at it. Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Lee.
So I guess I would use it as like going to whomever, your boss or whatever, and saying like, I need support here, or this is a point of failure, so we have to put attention to this matter first,
Yep.
or that's how I would use it.
100%. Lee, Jordan, Pasita, all perfect, right? Where are you going to focus your efforts? Where are you going to focus your attention? What's critical? Give yourself more time to get things done and allow room for error. Jordan, that's a little bit more in the planning phase, and that's fine. So you're giving yourself float in your schedule so that you have float to kind of push it out, right? And then as far as monitoring, Pasita's doing a little bit more where you don't and do have wiggle room, right? Where do you need to focus your attention? Great, thank you all. And then here you'll see the ones in red are going to be critical and the ones in green are not. All right, so your homework is going to be doing the Gantt chart. There might be other ways to do it, but this is the way that I'm going to suggest that you do it. So you're going to fill this out and it'll create your Gantt chart. One thing I want you to notice, I really, really want, and I'm going to look for this, is compare your duration on this one compared to what you did on your precedence diagram. If they don't match, that's fine, but I want to know why, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at what you submitted here and look at what you submitted last week. And if they match, you don't have to say anything. If they don't match, I'm going to ask you, why don't they match? And I think I'm going to give like 5 points to that. It's not going to be a huge deal. But what I do when I miss something is I often email you. So if I don't see it, I'll just email you and be like, hey, I see these two don't match. What did you learn from that, right? But what you're doing is really, really similar to last week. You're putting in your task name. You're putting your start and end date. And to be honest, you literally could take this from what you did last week. You can copy and paste your tasks in there. You know your durations, right? And then you can build your start and end dates based off of what you saw last week. Now, something that is interesting is, I think this automatically calculates it. So all you have to do is put in your start date, and then you would say, okay, that's going to start on 2/2, right? It's 5 days. And then this is set up to equal that. You can play around with the formulas, but this should be pretty simple. So you're just filling that out. So last week was the hard week. This week should be kind of simpler as far as developing your schedule. Okay, so week 6, right? Making sure that we do that. All right. Yeah, I guess I didn't mean to, but I ended a little early. Any questions? Lee, please send me that program plan again. I'm so sorry I missed it. I am interested in that. I don't know why I missed that, but I would be excited to see that. But in general, does anybody have any questions, comments? Yeah, Brittany.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So can you go back to that slide really quick? Sorry, the Gantt chart one.
Like this one or the Excel document?
The Excel document.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, here's your.
So yeah, I already know that mine's not going to match because on my the critical path diagram or whatever you call it, yeah. I thought the duration was how many days into the project it had to be started, but that looks like it's saying the duration of the task itself. So if I just make a note of that,
you'll be fine. Yeah, that's all I want you to do is tell me. I'm not gonna what is it, precision, right? If you don't get the same answer those 2 times, it's not gonna kill me. I'm just gonna want to know why. So Brittany, you have an explanation? That's all I'd like to hear.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, thank you. What other questions? Yeah, no, thank you, Brittany. What other questions do you have? Oh, I'm sorry. You asked a question. Is there anything we need to consider with concurrent tasks? Yeah, right. So what you're asking is about concurrent tasks. This is set up for everything to be, as you can see here, finish to start, right? Finish to start. Everything is this waterfall where one ends, the other one starts. So all you have to do, if I'm answering your question correctly, is just if they're concurrent, right? You just put it as concurrent. You change that so that the schedule matches what you want, right? So then if they're concurrent, let's make these bigger so we can kind of see what we're looking at, right? So if they're concurrent, you just put in the start date at the same time, or if it's even pushed out a little, right? Or let's say it's 3/2. Well, maybe not 3/2, but 2/25. I don't know, right? Does that make sense, Pasita? Is that what you're asking, or no? Did I misunderstand your question? Oh, thumbs up. Cool. Cool. What other questions do we have? Hopefully this week is a low impact week. I know last week, as Niraj said, was just the bane of their existence. So hopefully this week is easier. That's all I have this week. If you don't have questions, you can hop off. If you do have questions, I'll stay for 5 more minutes and you can ask them. So have a great week. Hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully you're learning a lot. You can always hit me up for one-on-ones.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. I guess, Niraj, what time works on Wednesday? You're Eastern, right?
Yeah, I'm in Fort Wayne.
What's that?
I'm in Fort Wayne. Maybe around 1 or 2 o'clock works for you, sir.
Okay, so my Wednesday's wide open. This is Central Time. So tell me what time you want, and I'll put it on my calendar.
Okay, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. 2 o'clock for me is going to be 1 o'clock for you.
Yep. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to stop recording because there's no reason to record this.